Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael, and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a user named Immeasurably Alt in the True Off My Chest subreddit. The post is titled, "I chose to be child-free and lost the love of my life. Now I have a chance to get her back. I'm now 33 and Leah is 33. I met her in our first year of university and we dated into our mid-20s, moving in together along the way. The relationship was everything I could ever want, but eventually questions that don't really come up at age 18 started to matter, and we found ourselves at an impasse. She wanted kids at some point, not that very moment. I didn't at all, not just at that moment. We buried our heads in the sand for a couple of years, just hoping the other would change their mind, until it became clear we wouldn't, and we called it quits. That pretty significant roadblock was basically the only thing holding us back from getting engaged right then and there. So when things ended, I didn't know what to do with myself. I understood I didn't want to be the reason Leah wouldn't have something she clearly wanted, but it was rough. Over the next year, there were a few times when I was damn close to calling her to say I'd changed my mind just to get her back. I'm not sure if I was actually planning to follow through on that change of heart and be a father to kids I didn't really want, or if I'd have just lied to her long enough to get my way. Both seem pretty shitty, but anyway, it thankfully didn't come to that. But eventually I moved on, got back out there, and 8 years later I've had a handful of relationships, including a couple I'd say got serious, the latest of which ended around a year ago. I have nothing negative to say about the women I've dated, but it never clicked like it did with Leah, which I guess is why they eventually fizzled out around the 1 year mark. Back to Leah, we never technically burned bridges and even said we'd stay friends, but for most of the time that's passed since we broke up, we didn't make good on that. We were in contact occasionally, but far from frequently, and we mostly kept it surface level, to the point that saying we were friends would have been a significant stretch. That started to change last spring as our infrequent chats slowly but surely turned into frequent hangouts. Of course, officially we were merely reconnecting as friends, but when two single 30-somethings with a lot of history start spending more and more time together while conspicuously not making much of an attempt to see other people, it shouldn't be a massive surprise that things might not remain completely platonic forever. It did take a while though, but just last week, one of us finally took a decisive step to change the status quo. We spent a lot of time together over the holidays, hanging out at my place on Christmas and attending a New Year's Eve party together as friends, of course, for example. I guess that's when Leah got tired of me keeping up the platonic pretense and decided to take things into her own hands. When we saw each other last week, she came right out and told me she wants us to be together again. She directly addressed the elephant in the room, the reason we broke up, and said she doesn't expect me to have changed my mind and is fine with that. She said she's had a few pretty good relationships over the past few years, but she never quite felt the same way she did with me, and that reconnecting over the past year confirmed I still make her feel things others just don't. She said we don't have to jump right back to where we were all those years ago, and that she just wants to give us another try. She told me to think it over, and that's where I'm at, feeling kind of lost. Because yes, in my immeasurable genius, and despite realizing months ago that my feelings for her had in fact returned, because of course they have, I opted to wait until now to think about what I'd do if she felt the same and brought it up. On the one hand, of course I want to try again, but while Leah told me she's fine with my stance on having kids, she didn't outright say that she no longer wants them. I probably should have asked right then, but immeasurable genius, in my defense, I had a few things to process, okay? So are we trying again just to once more kick that can down the road in hopes that the other changes their mind? I've also had a vasectomy, so yeah, I think I'd win that one. Or is she outright willing to give up on that for me? And if it's the latter, that's a pretty significant concession. Am I comfortable with the idea that she might wake up in X years regretting her choice when it's actually too late? And then there's the fact that, okay, we can take things slow or fast or whatever, but if things went south again between us, it would be a pretty tough hit for me to take, if the first time was any indication. And finally, yes, I know that if I want to actually get answers, I kinda just need to talk to Leah about all of this, which I already plan to do when I next see her in a few days. I should probably tell her about the vasectomy either way. I'm not expecting Reddit to have all the answers to this. I mostly typed it out to help put my thoughts in order. Update. I'd already invited Leah to come over for dinner on Wednesday before sending out the original post, which, as the day came, felt both far too soon and like I couldn't wait much longer. When Leah got to my place, I decided to have the big conversation right out of the gate. I realized it might spoil the evening, but honestly, I don't think I'd have made for a very pleasant dinner partner with that rather pivotal conversation hanging over our heads. I started with the good stuff, telling Leah how much I loved having her in my life again and that I shared every feeling she'd voiced last time, that I'd never felt like I do with her, either then or now with anyone else, but that she'd correctly guessed my position on having kids hadn't changed, that I'd in fact had a vasectomy, and that if we were to try again, I'd need to know she's truly okay with this and isn't sacrificing something she might regret later. I told her I'd love to give us another shot, but she deserves to be happy and fulfilled, and if I can't be the one to make that happen, the fact that she hasn't found the right one yet doesn't mean she won't. Fun fact, telling the woman you love that there might be another guy out there who'd make her happier than you could is in fact not fun. Leah replied that she thought I might say something along those lines and that she'd been anything but rash in making that decision. She admitted that she'd always pictured herself having kids at some point, and it's not like she woke up one day and that desire had just vanished, but she once thought it'd be something she'd need by age 30 until she found herself past that arbitrary deadline without kids, yet generally content with her life. She said she has a niece she loves very much and a nephew on the way, and that she'd been questioning whether she truly needed kids of her own even before she and I reconnected, confessing that this evolving outlook was part of why she'd allowed herself to get close to me again. She conceded that she hadn't become opposed to the idea of having kids either, but that at this point she wouldn't call it a sacrifice, just a choice, one that feels right to her. Now, I'm probably not the most objective person to say this, but I felt it was a pretty damn convincing sales pitch. I told her that, as she'd suggested, taking things slow was most likely the right call. I said I'd understand if she re-examined that choice and only asked that she be open with me about it, but that in light of everything, I'd love to take her out on a date at the first opportunity if she'd have me. She replied that she'd love that, then poked fun at my framing of us going on a date as if it were something new, like we hadn't spent the past several months seeing each other regularly for one-on-one dinners and other similarly intimate settings, including that very evening. I countered by saying I hoped that by the end of this date, she'd notice a marked difference between those times and the next one. Getting the big talk out of the way early, thankfully, turned out to be the right call, since its outcome was a positive one, and we had a lovely time together for the next few hours. Nothing too materially different from our recent hangouts, aside from a bit of flirting, some gentle touches here and there, and a goodbye hug that lingered longer than usual, but it felt good to just be with Leah without having to pretend my heart doesn't skip a beat every time she flashes me a smile. So right now, I'm planning our first date and kind of sitting on cloud 9. There probably won't be another update anytime soon. I really appreciate the feedback I got the first time and will read what people have to say here as well, but I don't think writing a play-by-play of this new relationship would be the best way to enjoy each step that comes. I'll soft commit to an update at some point, but that's contingent on my remembering to do it, having something to share that I actually want to put out there, and the fact that I'll most likely show these to Leah eventually, so whether you guys ever hear from me again will also be up to her. User 99 said, so many anecdotes and advice that are just not good. Having children is a big decision that influences so many lives. Just because some people were fine with having children eventually because their partner wanted kids or vice versa, doesn't mean that OP's relationship would survive in the long run as well. Resentment can and will tear relationships apart, and being pushed to get on board with that kind of decision can easily be a source of it. This doesn't even account for the impact it would have on the children. Good luck to OP, and I hope for their sake that they're happy in the end. User Astro Can You Not said, I think this story is lovely, but I'm unreasonably annoyed with all the commenters trying to convince OP to just have kids. Just because you gave in and had one and it worked for you doesn't mean anything. He doesn't want kids, and it's not a band-aid to keep a relationship together. I relate to OP's girlfriend. I thought I'd have kids by now and really wanted them when I was younger, but I'm nearing 40 and it hasn't happened, and I'm not panicked. I could take steps to have one, but I like the flexibility of my life, and the relationships I have with my friends' children honestly are enough. This next post was made in the AITA subreddit by a user named Dapper Conflict. The post is titled, "I'm not letting my mom meet her grandchild because I am still upset that she divorced my dad." Backstory. My mom divorced my dad when I was 11 because she didn't want our grandma to move in with us. She was afraid of being a caregiver, but she didn't push for primary custody and left me living in an environment she didn't want to live in herself. It was rough, and during that time I did end up becoming a caregiver, which I understand is why she left, but she left me to live the life she herself didn't want. For a time, I resented my dad, but as I grew up, I came to understand why he did what he did. Grandma was awesome and full of love. I still don't forgive my mom though. I understand why she made the choice to leave, but I'll always hold it against her that she left me in an environment she wanted no part of herself. 3 years ago, my husband and I welcomed a beautiful baby girl. My dad, aunts, and uncles think I should let my mom meet her grandchild. My dad was always the better person, he never held it against her, but I still do. I don't hate what my life was, but I do hold it against her that she left me to live in an environment she herself wasn't comfortable with. Everyone tells me it's been 16 years and time for me to let it go. I haven't spoken to her in those 16 years. She wasn't even invited to my wedding. I don't know. My dad agrees it's okay for me not to have a relationship with my mom, but he feels I shouldn't cut her off from her grandchild. I'm torn. Update. I know I was defensive, but many of the comments got me thinking. Originally, I had no intention of reaching out to my mom, but I briefly saw her at my cousin's house. She recently had a baby boy. I asked if she wanted to have breakfast one day and talk. She said yes, so we did. Right off the bat, I asked her the big question. Why did she leave me? She told me my dad was no saint, but he wasn't abusive. She explained that the situation was complex. She said he was trapped by his cultural obligations and sense of duty to his mom. She told me how he wouldn't listen to her because that was his mom and she needed help. She said she tried to come up with a compromise, like her getting a place nearby and them hiring some help, but he said that would cost too much. She told me his final compromise was that she move out and they would hire help to reduce the burden. She just couldn't agree to that. I asked why she didn't stay to see how things would go, and she said that if she had stayed, she never would have left. She would have felt the need to stay to protect me. She admitted it was selfish of her and said it's something she regrets, but at the time, she didn't want to feel trapped. I asked her why she didn't fight for more custody or respond to my cries for help early on. She told me that in her heart of hearts, she felt I was better off with him overall. She said I was able to stay in the same school, live in the same neighborhood with my friends, and have a lovely home. She also said that due to my age, my dad realistically wasn't able to make me do much of the caregiving until I was older. She thought that would buy her some extra time to get her situation in a better place. She regrets not telling me that because by the time things stabilized for her, I was already in high school and thought less of her. She did apologize and told me she wished she had tried harder, but she felt leaving was her only way out. I also asked if the situation was so bad that she felt the only thing she could do was leave. Why is she still friends with my dad? She told me she didn't leave him because she stopped loving him as a person. She left because she didn't love what he was trying to do and wanted no part of it. We spoke about other things, but overall, I'm conflicted. She asked to meet up again for her birthday on the 29th, and I told her maybe. I do appreciate that she didn't ask to see my child. I have other things I want to ask, so maybe I'll meet up with her again, but I don't know. I still feel anger toward her. I don't think her reasons are very good, but I'm also still bitter, so I don't know. I still can't hate my father, and it seems my mother doesn't hate him either.